Today, we'll start with electricity. Seems it's one thing that we're always talking about in South Africa. Eskom says they will most likely implement load shedding again today. This week has been headlined by darkness and darkness to come as Eskom continues to struggle keeping the lights on. There have been reports of long period blackouts and embassies that have evacuation plans in place should we stumble into this darkness. This after it was announced that a unit crashed at the Koeberg Nuclear Plant. No doubt we're dealing with a crisis, but have we reached a point of going into panic mode or stop, breathe and take a look at what we have? As individual households, are we going to deal with this situation? It appears South Africans have been heeding the call to conserve electricity. Many consumers have been making their own plans, buying into renewable energy sources, equipping their homes, and are today smiling as some of their neighbours continue to be in darkness. Has the Eskom situation served as a wake-up call to you and to many others? Well, today we are joined by Kadri, Nassiep, the CEO of the South African National Energy Development Institute. Good morning.
Hi, morning, Evan.
Mouthful I've said there. I want to start right at the top of it. Your views on the kind of hysteria that's doing the round about us going into an extended blackout period, an extended period of darkness. How do you view this?
Well, I think certainly load shedding is a reality. I think if you look at it in context, the possibility of a national blackout, that's possibly much more remote. But the load shedding reality, that's there. And it's due to a number of factors. I think Eskom has reported widely on the lack of maintenance, particularly during summer months, which is traditionally when we have to maintain those plants when demand is actually much lower. And because that hasn't happened to the extent that it was required, we're now sitting in a situation where we're catching up on maintenance, and unfortunately those plants are going out of service at this point in time.
Just talk about SANEDI, your organization. How do you integrate into the energy sector? And what do you see as your role really going into the future?
Well, SANEDI has a very unique mandate. We're the state's energy development arm. So we're entrusted with a responsibility which is twofold. Firstly, to help develop new energy solutions and also to integrate existing current best practices into the energy supply and demand sectors. And then the second most important one in this context, of course, is the mandate with respect to energy efficiency. So it's all about driving programs within the various sectors that comprise demand in this country, whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, and actually putting together programs that actually support a reduction in energy demand.
The plans and the research has been conducted to develop South Africa towards more sustainable and renewable energy. Where are we?
Well, you know, government has run a very successful auctioning system, which is called the Rebid program, and that largely focuses on renewable energy. And as a result of that program, we have just over 1,000 megawatts of new capacity that's been brought online by the private sector. So that does help in terms of mitigating against the impact of load shedding. But at the same time, the overall system requirement is something closer to 5,000 megawatts. So there's still a huge shortfall. Now, given the current supply options that we have in the country, as you know, both Medupi and Kusile, the two large coal-fired stations, are both delayed. So we're expecting that certainly load shedding will continue for at least the next 18 months. And at the same time, the new power plants that are being constructed by the private sector, which are mainly renewable energy ones, are also to some degree delayed by the lack of distribution or transmission infrastructure. So it's a catch-22 situation. So we do require further demand to be reduced. And the way to do that is through large energy efficiency programs. And so we're currently in the process now of working together with National Treasury, the main department, which is Department of Energy, and then, of course, the members that are contributing to the War Room, which is led by the Deputy President, to try and put all that together.
We saw there South Africans are seemingly buying into this. Are South Africans buying into energy efficiency, living, doing more with less? Or from my point of view and some of the criticisms that we have from, I can only talk from the circle that I'm in, people say things like, oh, but when I drive around town, all the lights are on in all these big buildings, but we have to switch off our fan or whatever it is at home. But when you drive through cities, the lights are on in all these buildings. So how do you balance that?
I think there's a range of initiatives that are required. If you start with the residential sector, for instance, most people have a knee-jerk reaction to this and go and look for diesel generators. And a lot of them don't realize, of course, that diesel generators are expensive to maintain and to fuel.
Yeah.
And they, of course, they are polluting as well. So we also try and discourage that, even though we understand that people require electricity, so they have to do that. What you've just mentioned in the context of commercial buildings is a sad reality. In fact, just in the news yesterday, there was lots of discussion about certain companies, and I won't name and shame them, but certainly they have left their lights on, and of course they supply us with our landline communications. So
yes.
Anyway, the reality is that there are companies out there, and they've acknowledged their mistake. And I think that's the important thing. It's a behavioral shift, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And that's the lowest cost option, is changing behavior. Malls, for instance, leaving lights on in parkades in the middle of the night. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
You need motion sensors to guide people to only have light where they're required. People complain that with street lighting, if you don't light up areas adequately, there'll be increased crime. That's not necessarily true, because we find that street lights are on in the middle of the day in some cases. So it's all about behavior. It's about behavior. But there are a number of other options. For instance, we're looking at possibly getting Lead SA involved in helping us to drive corporates to accommodating us with a particular scheme that looks at employees sourcing the relevant appliances and infrastructure to make their homes more greener, and getting it from their employers, and we'll assist them to do that.
Quickly, 30 seconds. What, if there's one thing you could tell the consumers at home what they should start implementing to be more sustainable?
I think firstly start with behavior. Follow the instructions from Eskom, because they are important. We have a morning and an evening peak. The more we can reduce the morning and evening peak, the easier it becomes for Eskom to manage the demand.
Yeah.
So if they cut out the non-essential appliances, it is going to make a difference. Diesel generators are last resort. There are other options in the marketplace as well. Converting to gas-fired stoves is a fantastic option.
Yeah.
Converting to solar water heating, another important option. Lighting is a huge contributor as well, energy efficient lighting, and then also I would suggest uninterruptible power supplies, UPSs, mainly battery storage.
Yeah.
If you've got the money, go rooftop PV, get your own PV supplies. It'll help you to get through this period.
Well, Kadri, thank you. That's fantastic. Much needed advice. At times we are in the dark ourselves as to what needs to happen, because you try and do a little bit, but it seems as if not everyone's playing ball, and then people lose a bit of faith. But thank you for